good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who's taken their precious time to join us for a conversation about building your brand without being a slave to content. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I studied computer science and math, and I was never really an accomplished writer. And to help us with this topic today, we're really blessed to have Kate Bradley Turnus. Kate, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Great to know that you're there.
So,
In the attendee list, I can see you.
Kate is the CEO of Lately. Kate, let's go ahead into your bio screen. Let's talk about you.
Yeah. Well, gosh, thanks, John. It's so nice of you. I love doing this with you, of all people, by the way. So thank you so much, and thanks, Michaela.
You
Also.
bet.
So I'm the CEO of Lately. Lately is an artificially intelligent powered social media writing tool, where we'll get into kind of how it works, but we really focus on what we've learned our customers hate to do, which is writing, right? That fear of the blank page, making sure you say the right thing, feeling confident, knowing that you're going to be interesting and be a resource to touch on some of the ideas that John was talking about earlier. So that's one of our goals, and we'll kind of walk through that later. But back in the day, first of all, I was a rock and roll DJ in my other life. Hello. So I do give pretty good phone. And I was also a marketing agency. So my last gig was at Walmart, when I had at Walmart as a customer, 130% ROIs when I got them with a spreadsheet system, again, focused on this idea of writing and helping customers not only do it by themselves, but as a group, and utilizing the networks in front of them, like employees, to really maximize the power and the reach of that message.
And Kate, what I love about what you created with Lately is that I think the best products come from people that have the pain, because they're passionate about it and they know the problem. And I'm not sure if you're aware that Hootsuite was created from a marketing agency that suffered from similar things. And so what I love about Lately is, if you're going to share content, you can't share the same phrase across all your identities or your team's identities. You need to mix it up in order to make it work. And what Lately does is it intelligently rephrases your shares in a way that keeps them fresh and relevant beyond many other things that it does. Let's go to the next one, and let's let people know who I am, for those that don't know me. So as I shared before, my name is John Furr. I'm the CEO of Nimble. Before starting Nimble, I founded a company called Goldmine. Goldmine was Outlook and Salesforce combined before either existed, back in the DOS days, the DOS days, for those that don't know what that is. And I got back in the business after selling Goldmine when I was 40, spent 10 years raising 3 babies. Amazing journey. I'm so lucky to have retired at 40 and spent 10 years doing what being a present dad and husband and member of my community, which is amazing. But it also gave me a chance to swim in the social river, see the immense power of social and its application to business. And I built Nimble to help people build relationships better, smarter, faster. So let's go ahead and get into the agenda.
Awesome. John, you're so amazing.
Okay.
Indeed. Really. So we're really excited. We're going to talk about saving time with content distribution and artificial intelligence. Going to touch on some of my favorite writing rules, some tips that I've learned over the years, as well. Content that you should be sharing across different social networks. And then, John, you're going to jump in and show us some Nimble magic, talk Nimble with us as well.
Yeah.
We can use that.
And one of the things I want to emphasize, Kate, is that ideally this is interactive as much as possible, even though there's this sort of like kind of wall between our audience and us. And I would so love to be in a small hall to see your faces and feel your energy. But in place of that, please use the question box where you put in the where you're from and everything. type your questions in there. We're going to compile your questions and answer them as much as we can throughout and at the end of the presentation. So please, please, please ask questions. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So shall we dive in?
Yeah.
All right, diving away. So I think it's pretty clear, but most people kind of groan when it comes to writing in general. What we found is that it's not only just sales and marketing writing that's difficult, but email writing, even text writing, communicating on Slack. So companies actually spend more than $3.1 billion each year on remedial writing, which is pretty incredible, right? So it's not just marketing or sales externally, but internally, there's the challenge of making sure you're not wasting each other's time, to make sure that what you're saying is getting understood, so then people can go out and do the task or achieve what it is they need to achieve. So it seems like it's that writing is that thing that people used to make fun of, right? English majors, what are you going to do with that career? I was a fiction writing major. Turns out it's been pretty handy for me. But it really just thinking about that base level of what is it that you want other people to do? Do you want them to buy your stuff? Do you want them to complete the task you've assigned them? And when you're thinking about your writing, how are you getting them to actually do that? Can they understand what it is that you're telling them to do? It's not an instinctual thing for most of us, right, John? I mean, a lot of people, like you said, maybe they have math and science brain, and writing is just kind of challenging, or they're not really thinking about it with the gravity that they might need to, because that effect of poor writing can really be pretty catastrophic across your workspace, right? Are you wasting other people's time? Are you making them take a longer time just understanding what to do, right? Go ahead.
The most powerful form of engagement is communications. And if you can't
Right.
effectively communicate your ideas verbally, but more importantly in writing, you will not succeed as a human being in most cases. And so it's one of the reasons why at Goldmine and at Nimble, I primarily like to hire liberal arts majors, because they can communicate, they can do research, and you can teach people business and technology, but you can't teach them to be an effective communicator. And besides the fact that liberal arts majors are, generally speaking, more affordable than technology and business majors, but I do believe that communicating is critical, and that's why I've had to hone my communication skills. I can tell you the first time I ever got up and did a presentation in front of a board room at a corporation, I actually started to black out and tear up in a way.
Oh no.
And I've come a long ways.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, in this research, when I was working with the Walmart project, right, they actually hired me to come in and do the long form writing, and I was just stunned. This was a project, there were tens of thousands of companies of all different sizes, with all different marketers of different skill levels and different budgets, and the one commonality was the hating of the writing, right? They were just constantly bringing in other consultants. And as the years have gone by, we also learned that companies waste $4 billion each year because of poor writing. Poor writing is costing them that money. And again, it's not just because like the sales copy stinks. It's because also internally they're just like, just think of this. Have you ever had the exchange of emails where you're like, hey, want to go? Can you join me at this meeting? Sure. And then you have to write back, when, right? Tomorrow, what time? That kind of thing, right? So just, I think putting a greater emphasis on something that we all take for granted is really important here. And the other thing we want to touch on is the way technology is morphed. So yes, there's videos and emojis and photos and all those things, but really writing is still at the basis of how we communicate. And to your point, John, it really does define us as human beings. So kind of, we're getting a little retro, but it's important for any younger people in the room to know that, like, this is a skill. It is absolutely still top of the list gold, right?
Amen.
Uh, okay, amen, amen. So one of the things we want to talk about were some of my top writing tips that I started these with my own staff because it was making me crazy just internally, and then we started translating them to our customers who were asking the same question. So John, here's my number one no-no of all time is using the phrase check out as a call to action. Are you guilty of this?
I don't
Everybody is.
know. I think it's a little too casual for me. I would probably say something stronger and more clear, I think.
Yeah, I think you have that insight, but you can think of like all the times people say this all day long. Check out my blog, check out my idea, check out my photo, right? And when I want all of you guys listening to think about this. When's the last time you actually did what that person asked? If there was a link and you checked it out, right? Almost never, because the call to action gives you zero information about what's behind the link, for example. So the whole point of a call to action should give you like a mini movie trailer of what's to come so that you're compelled to move forward to do the next step, right? So checkout is, in my opinion, pretty lazy, kind of vapid, sorry. But I even like really get on everybody's case about it on my own team as I know. But I also love words, John, and everyone else. Like I think that the language we all have, whether it's English or Spanish or French or whatever it is you speak, like there's just so many beautiful verbs to choose from. Like, own that. Use those puppies. And it'll set you apart. That's the other thing, right? Um,
Yeah. As a
Go ahead.
computer science major, I learned if this and that. uh,
Right.
and
Right.
I think that if you want to grow faster in 2020, then if you want to build your brand, then right. So be clear. I think you need to align the promises you make and the experience you deliver. And if you could do that, you could build a gold mine. And I think you need to be clear on your promise.
I think as well, and you can do it also with some personality. So like in this example we've given here, which you're also touching on, like so I just talked out learn more as just something better than check out. But like really if you could put a little of your voice in there, so get ready to have your mind blown, like that's how I would talk, right? So I'm really using capital letters as a way to emphasize, the feeling I want you to get, and sort of putting a little more juice into it. And then I also touched here on a passive aggressive style. So like, you can do a negative call to action or a passive aggressive one. Like read this, read our political conversation at Thanksgiving. Like here's an article on what I believe should upend, your thoughts or that kind of thing. So just giving yourself like the permission to not only be more clear, but be more interesting, which I think is something that like, it's really hard to be interesting. People feel that it's really hard to be interesting in writing and online, especially, but actually it's super easy. And one of the ways to do that is just by literally choosing better, smarter verbs, right?
And I think that when you talk about interesting, I think it's important to put your personality out there because I think that
For
people
sure.
connect to humans, they don't connect to machines. And you should share some of your heart and soul and personality in your prose because I think that it helps people to connect to and see the real you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if this is one of the tips here, and so I might be jumping ahead, but one of my favorite ways to do that, John, is literally by reading what you write out loud. And so if you do that, you actually hear what other people hear, right? Because people do hear the voice in their head. And it gives you, if it's boring to you, or if it's cumbersome in any way, like as you put it out through your mouth, through your lips and your tongue, if it feels awkward to say, it feels awkward to read, right? Little radio trick that I learned
Mm.
from those days. Um, so on that idea though of being like more human and more natural, contractions are a big one, right? We don't generally talk in non-contractual phrases. I don't say I am going to the store. I say I'm going to the store, or in this case, moonwalking, which I'm terrible at, right? But it's just such an easy thing. What contractions do is they make that writing more personable and more accessible. which is that's that human thing, right? It suddenly makes you seem like someone I can have a conversation with versus someone who's just sending me a one-way message that I need to react to, right?
Amen.
Okay, amen. Cool. So moving on. So back to the call to action. So like we were all taught in school to do a lot of preamble, right? So like, remember you wrote a paper and like the first paragraph had to like set the stage and like lay it out. Then you got into the meat of things. And like these days, nobody has any time for that. Like you need to like, get to the meat of the thing immediately and don't bury the lead. I was just talking to someone about this earlier, right? So it's our nature, our human nature is to bury the lead and like say some kind of warm up deal beforehand. Which is why editing is like my favorite thing in the world. So I like to vomit it out all on the page and then like remove. And thinking about turning everything into a call to action is a great way to do that, right? So like just take away the stuff in the front. This is I'm referring to Solo, like, you know, the Han Solo Star Wars movie here, but like see Solo now, like just verb do thing rather than, oh, you got to go see this now, right? And again, thinking about those action verbs, but they're like the best thing you could possibly come up with. Like, and thinking about using them like fuel the fire, right? There's an action verb in a sentence.
I think that this sort of reminds me of a lot of emails that I've read that either are I've gotten from people or I've edited that are going out to people. And there's too much preamble. I think that you can get lost in the preamble, that we don't have time for much preamble. You need to essentially get to the point as quickly as possible. So I know if I'm even going to look at the rest of the message that's there. And so I 100% agree that you can give a little bit of warm up, but we got to get to the action as soon as possible.
Yeah, and there's also, John, there's like a little psychology working here as well, because when you're using call to action, they're commands. And so you're kind of like, you're urging people on to do what you want them to do by starting with that verb, right? And you can see it here. See Solo now. It makes you jump a little bit as opposed to you have to see Solo now, right? You can even hear how I read it out loud. And so that's jumping into kind of what we talked about earlier, but here we go. So writing like you talk and how important this is. So for me, for example, in real life, not on a webinar, I swear like a sailor. But in my public life, obviously don't do that. But I need to emphasize what I like to say with different hyperbole. So I'm old and I love Hanna-Barbera, and so I'm often pulling kind of hyperbole from there. So like jumping Jehoshaphat and hot diggity and whatever. But these are my things. And so I pepper them a lot through. The reason I do that is because number one, it cuts through that noise. Those are terms and phrases that not a lot of people use because it's super dorky, and I'm cool with that. But also it can break up the rest of the seriousness, right? It shows my personality. And it gives you, again, permission to do that yourself, permission to mirror my own less polishedness, you might say, right? And in this case that we are seeing here, I've done something as well, which, whoa, that is crazy cool. Can you guys hear that? Like, it's a big, big difference in what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And I'm even manipulating the word whoa itself by writing it out. And by doing that, I'm also commanding the page. Like, we know that that's a spelling error, but I don't care. So like that irreverence makes you pay attention to me, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
And I think it again humanizes you, right? Because if you're just writing marketing speak, I think we all glaze over because we're all bombarded. We're all overconnected, overcommunicated. I think that when you use vernaculars, you sort of stand out.
Yeah, for sure. It's really one of the most instinctual tools in the toolkit that we all have. And again, you can test that by reading it out loud, right? So when I say, I really think that is wonderful, like I feel like an idiot, like that wouldn't come out of my mouth. right? And it's an easy peasy test to do at any time. And you don't have to be so casual, right? You can still be professional, but still utilize that particular rule, reading what you write out loud, and upholding a company brand or whatever, by really just applying it, especially to those longer sentences. I feel that companies and brands, especially, they like to write these long sentences, and they're not thinking about how they sound or how they're being even understood by the reader, because they're just trying to maybe pack in so much, or maybe there's like a lot of 5-syllable words all in one punch, or worse, acronyms. God help us, right? So reading what you write out loud is the super money tip. Anne Hanley does that all the time, and I knew she did because we were talking one day, and I asked her about her newsletters because I can hear her voice, and she said, "How do you know that?" And I was like, "Because I can hear you," right? Cool. Next slide.
Love Anne.
So yeah, Anne, she's great. So avoiding passive language is super important as well, and there's a couple of reasons, right? So I hope you guys remember this from school, but like the green boots versus the boots that are green, or the writing rules of Kately, you can hear what the passive language is. So there's a couple of reasons. One, it does sound very awkward, and it can be like that old English, or like Shakespeare English has a lot of passive language into it. And it's also like doesn't get to the point fast enough. So you come off as weak, which you don't want to do when you're trying to get people to do things for you, which is what you're trying to do in writing almost all the time, right? You want something from somebody. It's more human. Again, there's that vernacular touch in there. So you guys can literally see is what we're talking about here, the themes. And that's a big one that people are guilty of all the time, is just having the passive language. It's a great way you can look at anything you're writing, and that's a quick edit you can make and instantly amp up whatever it is you've written without having to worry about using your vernacular or those more advanced things. Like this is just a quick and dirty tool there. This one's my favorite. So number 7, using negative calls to action in place of positive ones. I've tested this a number of times, and I invite you all to do it as well. So don't forget versus remember, for example. And the reason that don't forget, so that's the negative call to action versus remembering, which is positive. So don't, it makes you feel like a child right away. Somebody's scolding you. And so you've got that jump that happens, right? And so when you jump at something, you instantly want to react to it, right? And then here I'm testing you. Don't believe me? What did you guys all just do? Right? So it's an innate kind of trick that you can use. Again, this is that psychology of writing. Try it out. There's a couple of others that we can talk about as well. And I can't remember if this is in here, but because is a great one. So if you say a sentence, don't forget to follow these rules, period. Because when you follow the rule, you get a prize. So if you have that sentence, don't forget, and then because, what because does there is it makes you then lean in to the sentence, right? And it's just it's this magical word that creates empathy for anyone who reads it, and it makes people want to reply. There was a study that showed that just by using the word because in a sentence in one sales email versus another, that they had a 60% increase in response, right? So just think about that. Cool. So, and let me know if you guys have any questions about any of these, of course. So 8 is an interesting one as well. I love and I love and as a sentence starter. Oh no, like going against the grammar rules we've all had in school. But don't be afraid to do that. This does one thing we touched on earlier. It gives you command of the writer. When you're bossing people, you can boss people around with writing. I do it all the time. It's a great tool. When you're a better writer than someone else, they feel it, they know it, right? And you can be a better writer literally just by commanding the letters in front of you. And owning them, even if it's wrong, right? So there's power there. This is one of the funny ones, right? So kissing Kate's bum gets you brownie points and a smelly nose, right? And the and there in this case acts like a da da da, right? You can see there's the pause. Will get you brownie points and a smelly nose, right? So that's how I'm using and there. But you can also use like, which is true. So like could be like so. You can see that I did that there in the top phrase. These are just little advanced tricks. When you have a pause before and or a pause before like, because they're words that aren't words that normally start a sentence. So, normally we're having noun or subject, verb, those kinds of sentences. That's how they start. But when you're starting with these other kind of less usual words, it forces people to stop. And that's what you want. So you want them to get caught in what you're writing, so that they continue to read it, because otherwise people are glazing over just like everything else in their life, right? It's just a big wash of text in front of them. Instead, you want these eye-catching kind of pieces along the way. All right. Any questions about that?
Not yet. There are some questions about lately, but we'll get to those when we get done with this.
Cool. One thing I wanted to tell you guys about and that I learned recently that I really liked in public speaking, I heard someone use and in place of or so or And so every time they were hesitating, they just said, and then we do this. And it will get you this. And I thought that was a really interesting tactic that gave them full command as opposed to making them look weak with ums and ahs. So the power of and is real, really real. All right. We've talked about why and because a little bit earlier. So this is the details.
It makes you sound better than saying
And exactly, John. Look at you. Exactly. It really does. Okay, so this is the why and because. We talked about that a little bit. All this stuff is related, so you can see me jumping around, but I hope you guys are sort of getting the gist here. When there's an implied why in a statement, you use because to compel a response, right? So that means why wants to be resolved. So when you ask somebody why do you want to learn this? Why does this feel this way, right? They immediately think because those things fall together all the time, right? And why triggers like this sense of reason. So why followed by because gives the answer. When you have an answer, you're trustworthy, right? So try lately because it is awesome versus just try lately. So there's some tricks in there. The word because, like I said before, just using it in general makes people think of why or something that needed to be said in front of the because is a resolving thing, right? It's an innately calming word, and whatever comes after it is going to be that as well. So it's a really great trick. Another example, I was wondering how your free trial's going because I'm here to save you time in your evaluation. And versus the sentence before. So just by the instance of sticking because in there, it makes it more vernacular. It makes you more trustworthy. It makes you more human. This is obviously a sentence pulled out of customer service. So I was talking to my customer service team, trying to get them to be more trustworthy, more emotional in their communications with our customers. It's also using it in the beginning of the sentence. So I'm creating that pause. There's a lot of tricks here. I also all capitalize the word awesome. That gives you my voice. It gives you the emphasis, right? We don't always have italics and bold in our live online. So you have to emphasize it some other way. And then earlier we talked about using contractions, but in this case, I didn't. I said, because it is awesome. And I did that because it makes the awesome more awesome. And it makes the sentence be a little slower. Try lately, because it is awesome versus try lately, right? Do you guys also hear how I'm reading all of this out loud? Like that's the other trick. Like I'm drinking my own champagne here as I'm writing it, so you can hear what I hear. So then the last bit should be obvious, but short is sexy. These days especially, we want to get to the point, but we also want to create that rhythm, right? So we've all might remember iambic pentameter, for example, that form of poetry. That's the poetry that everybody usually remembers and likes because it has that beat to it. Da, 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 da. So breaking short sentences up has a similar effect. It makes people roll along. It makes stuff stand out. There's an audio quality to it. You know, I'm coming from radio here, and I'm always hearing how the words are sounding in my head and then hopefully in your head. And then each short sentence can stand out like their own call to action. And you can see that I did that in the sentence there as well, because in the bottom one, I didn't break it up, right? Do you guys see the difference? I'll just read the top one and then I'll read the second so you can hear. Break your sentence up into short bits like a tweet. See if each section can stand on its own. This accent's call to action makes it more digestible and elicits response. Whereas in the bottom sentence, I'm going to say, break your sentence up into short bits like a tweet and see if each section can stand on its own, because this accent's call to action makes it more digestible and elicits response, right? Both are correct, but the top one is more interesting because there's a staccato to it. There's a rhythm, there's pauses in there. All right. Hopefully those were helpful to you guys.
You know, I often write my emails like this, Kate.
You do?
Yeah, well, I struggle to read long paragraphs. I think a lot of us do. And so I break my sentences up and I do character turns around thoughts. Sometimes I felt weird about it, but I just think it's easier to read and make the point as opposed to just putting it all in one thing. And plus, when I read like a big long paragraph, I just think the person's a little psycho.
It's true. It's true. It's so funny. Like there's an author whose name is escaping me, and his talent is actually writing like these really long, like literally page-long sentences, but doing it in a way that it has the cadence of our first example, which I remember when I first read this author, I was reading the first paragraph over and over and over again because it was like literally so long, and I studied it just to see how he broke it up. And he did it by using a lot of the tricks that we're talking here. But you know, I'm not that good, so I'm going to rely on the shorter sentences. But it really is an art to get you to pause and read something. Just think about all of you guys like this right now. Like everything you're doing in your day, whether it's responding to something your boss wants or delegating a task or trying to get a customer to you know, make the darn sale here, right? Is what you're writing to them, are you confusing them? Are you losing them because you're not commanding enough? Are you losing a customer because you're not human enough? Like, what is it that your writing is really conveying about, you know, what you're doing for yourself or your company? All right. Who wants to see lately? Anyone?
I do.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to really just dive in and show you, maybe talk about this afterwards, because showing is more fun. So I'm still sharing my screen, right? Everybody can see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome. So I am going to start at Nimble. I'm here at Nimble's blog. This is a really cool one. How to incorporate social psychology into social selling. Obviously, I love this idea. I'm going to go to the top of the blog here, guys, and I'm going to copy it, copying this URL. And then I'm going to pop into Lately. And I'm going to paste that URL here. And I'm going to add a couple hashtags. This was about social selling was the theme, and it's Valentine's Day, so let's do hot tips. Why not? It's almost Valentine's Day. I mean, I'm getting in the mood, obviously. I'm going to click this button here, and Lately's artificial intelligence is now going to get to work And what it's doing is it's actually, if we were in Nimble's Lately account, which we're not, but it would look at every single channel that Nimble had connected to Lately, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever, and it'll go back for a year, and it's looking at the most engaging posts that Nimble has posted, and then it's looking at the writing, the words that have appeared in those posts to create a business model, to create a natural language model based on that writing. So it's trying to help you make and write the most relevant content as possible. So in 1.8 seconds there, we just got 38 temporary social posts, which is pretty amazing. And what we're doing is we're actually just transforming that blog into social posts, okay? Right, so one link, 38 social posts. I'm just showing you two of them. You can see the link is there, the short link. There's the hashtags I put in there. And these are mini movie trailers designed to get you to click that link and read more, right? And there's my own tips right there. You can actually pop in and quickly edit something, right? So let's, like this, I can make it more human and use some of the tricks we just talked about. For example, whoa, ever heard of the Ben Franklin effect, for example? So I'm just like putting my voice on this and then amping it up a little bit, right? So I can do that. And so the point here is that Lately starts you at third base, really removing the fear of the blank page for you. And the human, as I just showed you, our job is to get you to home plate. So really, it's a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. My goal is not to remove the human in any way, because we want to keep that emotional, magical stuff happening with your content, but instead to, really just get you started, on the ground running, right? So there's a lot more to Lately, but once you have social posts like this, you can then schedule them. There's lots of other exciting things. We do what you just saw here with videos, podcasts as well, any kind of content that you can think of. Cool. So how do I put this back into full screen like this? So the idea a little bit, just to give you guys, and I'll try to move quickly here, John, with the AI and how it works. I want you to think of it like this. You all watch Netflix, right? Everybody owns Netflix. So what Netflix did when they came to town is they learned what we all wanted to watch, and then they took that data and they recommended relevant content based on what they learned. And then they took that data and started creating original content, like The Crown, for example, which is now the most watched on its platform, because what they're using is AI. So that's not automation, that's artificial intelligence. And it's what Lately does as well. It literally learns what your audience wants to read and helps you create more and more content based on what it learns. Cool. So I feel like I should get out of the way, John, here and let you have some of the stage. But if anyone has additional questions about Lately, just pop them in the chat and we'll answer them later.
So Kate, we've compiled all the questions into the background doc that Michaela shared with you in the background. So feel free to go into the question area and start answering questions that are there, or select the ones that you'd like to answer at the end. There is something from John says, I'm curious, Kate, because I think the author is Faulkner. Not sure what the question is, so we'll get to that.
Oh, it's not. It's I'll go find the author while John's talking and tell you who it is.
Okay, great. So Michaela, can you give me the screen? Okay, let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Not yet.
Okay, it says paused.
Okay, now we can.
Okay, great. So, Kate, I love all of your writing tips, but as a computer science math major, I struggle with writing nevertheless. Although I marvel at the way that you use prose to emphasize, break up, and get into people's minds. But I'm just going to briefly share, if you're not a writer, this is what you do tips quickly. So I believe that your brand new network are your net worth. Go Google yourself right now and see where you stand in the scheme of things. I think that many of us don't fall on the first page. I think that your brand and your network will help you achieve your dreams in life. That relationships aren't business cards or social connections. They're actually human connections that you build trusted relationships with. And that if you do that effectively, by helping other people achieve their dreams, you could achieve any dreams you want, and I can attest to that. Ultimately, though, it's your job to get to know people and their companies before you engage. And I think that people connect on what I call the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. These are the commonalities that you connect on to build intimacy and trust. And in today's over politicized world where we're all pushed to corners so that we fight with each other, I just want to share with you all that I believe there really isn't much difference between all of us Americans or even the world, that we all share common dreams and goals, and that in this era of fighting, I encourage you all to embrace one another and do away with the action words that divide us, and realize that we're all in this together and that we have a common, beautiful republic. Um, Ultimately, if you teach people to fish, they'll figure out yourself fishing poles. So stop talking about yourself. Stop talking about your products. Nobody cares. Start talking about how you can help other people become better, smarter, faster. And how can you do that? By sharing other people's contents. What is that? Other people's contents? OPC. There's a song, OPC, you and me. So other people's content is so easy to find. It's literally out there everywhere. And what I like to do is I like to get out in the social river and I like to read and find things that inspire me. And then the things that resonate with me, then I start to share that content. And by doing so, I build relationships. That's capital REL, relationships. And an example of a relationship that I have is this guy named Lee Odom, this guy from Minnesota. Lee is an amazing teacher in the marketing area, and is also a dear friend. And how did I meet Lee? I met him by swimming in the river and finding content that inspires me in and around the areas of Nimble's promise and purpose, which is social sales and marketing. And then what I did is I started to share Lee's content, because Lee basically shares amazing content on a regular basis. And it's really easy to do. You basically just go to that content and you use tools like I happen to use Buffer. You use tools like Buffer or Lately to basically go ahead and share that content and decide, where you want to share that, adding some humanness to the text. And then what you need to do is you need to then be able to listen and engage. And in the old days, I used to use dashboards like TweetDeck and Hootsuite to listen. And ultimately, if you are not listening and engaging to the content that you're sharing, it's kind of like putting a fishing pole or bait in the river and then not pulling up when there gets to be a bite. Because what you want to do is to share content to connect with prospects, customers, and ultimately their influences as well, to start conversations that result in mutually beneficial, measurable relationships. And so to do all this stuff, you need to be able to get out there in the river, start to listen, engage, share content that resonates. When people bite, click, and reel them in, and then put them into a platform where you can then go ahead and follow up and follow through. Because I think it's the basics that wins games. And I think most of us fail on the basics because you have to go to your CRM to use it. And gosh, it looks like a mainframe terminal. And that today's contact tools aren't really about relationships, and that's why we built Nimble. So I encourage you, for those that aren't using Nimble and you are using things like Office 365 or G Suite, to consider using a tool like Nimble that will automatically build records for you and then let you get them wherever you're engaging. And I think that the reason why there's 225 million global businesses and less than 1% use any CRM is because you work for the CRM. It doesn't work for you, and you have to go to it to use it. And that really, you don't live in your CRM, you live inside of your inbox. And now more and more, wherever you can have conversations with customers. And the problem is that your CRM doesn't go with you in all those places. And I think it should. And that's why we built Nimble, to enable you and your team to share a pool of contacts, to be able to go out and nurture new contacts that enable you to reel in relationships. So here's a Forbes article. I see this article about Satish. If I wanted to connect with Satish, Nimble would automatically build a record for Satish. And not only would he go ahead and build that beautiful record, but if I want Satish's contact info, Nimble has the ability to give me the contact info. If you give Nimble first name, last name, company, domain name, Nimble will go ahead and give you all the details you need to connect. But I encourage you not to just slam and spam people when you do this. What you'd want to do if you are going to reach out to them is reach out with in a relevant, authentic way that shares the value you might want to add and why you're reaching out. And ideally, don't even reach out before you start to walk in their digital footprint and add value to their conversation. And ultimately, then you don't even have to reach out to them, because they will reach out to you, because they'll see that you're adding value and engaging with them, and they'll want to learn more about you. And ultimately, I believe that the biggest cause of failure in relationships is really lack of preparing before the relationship, and then not engaging and following up in order to add value, pay it forward value in order to build and nurture that relationship. So that was just a quick little ditty about what I call the 5 E's of social business. You need to get out there and educate, enchant, engage, embrace, and empower your customers. You're doing that for a purpose, though, not to make money. Life isn't about making money. It's about making memories out of moments. And ultimately, what you're trying to do is to build a sustainable garden. And in the words of my wise wife, who is amongst other things, a landscape designer and horticultural therapist, she basically goes out and builds sustainable gardens by putting into the garden the things that attract other things, that protect other things, so that she doesn't have to spray pesticides, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to do as a human being on this planet, that you're trying to put things in your garden that attract other things, that create the self-sustaining garden. Content helps to attract people to you, and engagement creates this community around you that creates this self-sustaining opportunity for you to achieve your dreams, which I hope involve helping other people achieve theirs, because that is why I believe I'm on this planet, is to grow my soul. And I do that best by helping other people grow theirs. And with that, if you want to try a free demo of Nimble lately, email Chris at Try Lately for a free demo. If you are not using Nimble, feel free to sign up. And we're actually giving away a 30-day free trial. Normally it's 2 weeks. And if you like what you see after the trial, you can get 40% off your first 3 months by using the code John40. Don't worry about capturing all this. We will send you the deck and a recording of the webinar at the end to all registrants. And with that, Kate, let's dig into some questions. Hopefully we have some good ones.
Awesome. John, you're the king.
Was I ranting or what?
Yeah, I loved it. I was like, damn. Okay, so I have the questions from Michaela, sorry, and I answered them. But I will answer them out loud. Right? Am I doing the right thing, right? So Chuck wanted to know more about how Lately learns to rephrase content and carry the focus message, building your personal brand of experience focus, and how it can help businesses grow or improve with what his company shares with them. I wanted to say that, so first of all, Chuck, it'll be easier to show you this, but I can try to answer you as well. So what it does is it's actually not rephrasing your content. It's looking for the most compelling sentences that you've already created, and it's pulling the sentences into social posts. Then what it does is it gives you a word cloud based on the words that have appeared in those posts moving forward and going backward, actually. And it lets you curate the word cloud. So you can say, oh, wow, the word thank garnered 55 engagements over 2 social posts. Wow, that's a really valuable word. Do you want the AI to pay more attention and look for more sentences with that word or less sentence? So again, there's an opportunity for you to work with the AI. You can also feed lately your key messaging of your company, right? So like that's your boilerplate, your one line or your elevator pitch, and it'll start to use that as a basis. You can also feed it content based on different campaigns. So if you have an Easter campaign or Valentine's Day, for example, and you want to focus on things for those certain campaigns, you can do that as well. The way we help businesses grow is that we actually, what I didn't show you is that we can syndicate the content you create, not only on every social channel that you own, but every social channel in a network that you own. So if you're a franchise and you have 90 locations across the country, you can use Lately to do the marketing, not only for all the franchises, but for all the employees or all the social sales teams or individuals, right? So it's this idea of everybody, like we touched on in the beginning, everybody sharing the company message because it's cool and interesting and doing it without having to think about it, right? So like literally a click of the button, getting 1,000 people to market the entire company at once. It's a long answer. Sorry, long question. The book, by the way, is Jeffrey Lent. That's the author, whoever asked that question.
Kate, there's a question here from Tara Lynn, and she's saying let's say I want to market our nonprofit STEAM literacy program. I think she means STEM for inner city youth. What should I type in Lately's auto-generated field? I'm a writer, but I don't have time. Now, I think a lot of your presentation, Kate, related to I can say tricks, but methods to be more effective. But a lot of those word methods could be used either to write a blog post or to modify the header of a shared content that you share from somebody else's place. Would you agree?
100%, absolutely.
And so my advice to Tara Lynn is to find content related to STEM literacy and to share that content, put in your own words around the header or the words around the title of the thing, and then make sure you hashtag and attribute the writer, but also your own program, so people then relate to you and your facility, the content you're sharing. In other words, you could either tell people how great your STEM literacy program is, or you teach them how to be better at using STEM programs to grow their kids. And if you teach long and well enough, people will figure out that you have a great STEM program. What do you have to add?
It's true. And so the other thing we can do for Carolyn is if she's not a writer, we can instantly go find content for you, Carolyn. So if you put in, for example, like 3 topics, literacy, inner city youth, success, we would go find other articles that you didn't write based on that content, and you can auto-generate from there and look as a valuable resource sharing other people's content. And similarly, we also will let you paste in anything. So even though you may not be a writer, there might be press that's come in. So maybe someone at your program was interviewed, or there was a story written about someone there. You can auto-generate content from that as well, right? So there's a lot of different options. And remember, videos and podcasts as well.
So I got educated about what STEAM is. STEAM is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Oh, awesome. All good things.
Another question is Lately part of Vimble? No, we're just kissing cousins.
We would like it to be. Coming soon.
But I do want to say this. I think you guys can still see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay. So here I am in Lately, And what Lately does is enables our Nimble team to share this great content and then measure the reach of the shares, et cetera. But it also then looks and sees the top authors and engagement. And what I'm able to do is to use Nimble to then go in and essentially build or bring up records on those influencers that we're engaging with. And so you could use them in conjunction with each other.
Absolutely.
Do you see any other questions you want to cover before we close?
The only one somebody wants to know, they haven't published much. Yes, you can put a URL of a competitor, but you won't get what works for them because it doesn't learn from their social media channels, right? So it's very tailored to you. It's looking at what you've published online, whatever you've connected to lately. So it's not going to give somebody else your magic. It can't do that.
And by the way, Kate, I used one of your recommendations by saying kissing cousins instead of business partners, and I showed my character.
I puckered up immediately, John. Exactly. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that is it. What link for Lately? Is there special pricing for Nimble users? Go to trylately.com. You can see it right here in the URL, trylately.com, and you can sign up. In regards to a special for Nimble customers, I'll leave that to Kate.
Yeah, we're not doing specials at this time because we're in the middle of a fundraise and I need to keep my stats pretty level at the moment. But you're welcome to get a demo and learn about our pricing packages, and we'll always see if we can help you whenever we can.
Great. And with that, I'd just like to close by saying, Kate, thank you so much for joining us for a conversation about being a more effective communicator. And as a gentleman who's half Irish, I appreciate quality prose and great storytelling. And especially, I appreciate you and your friendship and what you're building with the Try Lately team.
Right back at you, my friend. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who joined in as well.
Thank you for taking the time to join us with us today. We will be sending out a copy of the recording, a copy of the deck, and please go out and kiss and hug a few people this weekend and tell them that you love them, because you just never know when you will see them again. So I hope that this is a weekend spent loving one another, and please stay off the political stuff on Facebook because it will drive you crazy.
True.
Thank you. Bye-bye.